What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to do a No Rules Edition shootout featuring the BMW M8 and also the Mitsubishi VR4 as well. So I would say these cars are going to be pretty common in some ways, but also pretty dang different. I also wanted to test them out against each other to really see what they can do, like a top speed test, and then jumping into a race to really see how they might actually compare to each other. What I find very interesting about both of these cars is not only are they going to be insanely different, after testing out both vehicles a good amount in different events, I would definitely say I'm going to have a favorite pick. What's kind of interesting, guys, is the fact that both of these vehicles really are so much different than each other. I'm sure a lot of people do know the VR4 is going to have a pretty high top speed, but I also think it's going to be slightly flawed with the way it's going to be designed. At least one thing I would say most players are going to agree with is the fact that both of these No Rules editions are going to look absolutely insane with the way they are designed. Like, I love the purple color on this BMW. You also have those really cool looking rims and like the gold engravings on it. So at least both of these cars are definitely going to look very cool. I would say when it comes to overall looks, I would most likely pick the BMW. But now besides all that, guys, first jumping into the BMW M8 here, so I wanted to do a quick top speed test. I decided to head over to one of the highways by Miami. I feel like that's a great way to do this, at least besides the salt flats by Nevada, but I wanted to see what this car is actually going to be able to get to, and after testing it out, I managed to get the BMW M8 No Rules Edition to be pushing around 255 miles per hour. Do keep in mind though, you really are going through lots of nitrous to do that, so I would probably say the actual top speed of this vehicle is most likely going to be around 252. I would definitely say that's not going to be worth it. Now, one thing I was also noticing is the fact that the BMW M8 actually seems like a really good vehicle. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be the best street car in the game, but I also feel like it's going to be insanely far from the worst. One thing I was noticing is after messing around with the pro settings just a little bit, my goodness guys, this car really does feel pretty dang nice when flying around corners. Now sure, it's probably going to have some flaws and stuff, but I really do think the BMW is going to be a car that you do want to take a look at, even compared to the VR4. I feel like both of these vehicles are going to be insanely different in many ways though. I do feel like the VR4 is going to have slightly better handling. What's also kind of interesting though is I also feel like the BMW M8 is going to be slightly faster on the top end, even though the VR4 is going to have a higher fifth gear. I found the BMW M8 to be slightly better when going above 250 miles per hour, which is definitely going to be very odd considering the VR4 is going to have a higher top speed than the BMW M8. But then again, guys, I feel like this is going to be some way to actually nerf one of the cars. One thing I also really do like about the BMW M8 is the fact that it's going to have really good acceleration. Now do keep in mind, guys, if you are running manual, the BMW M8 is obviously going to be an 8-speed. You will definitely be finding yourself shifting this car way too often. You might even find yourself in the wrong gear here and there trying to get used to it, but I do feel like that's going to be worth it because my goodness, this car has lots of power, and I feel like having closer shifts like that's going to make it easier to find the right gears around corners and stuff, which I was noticing when testing it out. Now sure, I would probably downshift a little bit too much because the RPMs really wouldn't be insane. Like for example, shifting from 4th to 5th or like 5th to 6th, I was noticing the gears aren't going to be insanely long, so you will have to shift this thing pretty often. But I do feel like that's going to be a positive with this vehicle, especially compared to the VR4, mainly because that car is going to be a 5-speed and the way it is geared is going to be way different than this BMW. And then moving over to the VR4 No Rules Edition, so I would say, guys, this car is also going to look awesome. I really do love the red interior in there, plus the red going around the rims. When I first saw this vehicle, I was like, dang, that thing's pretty dope looking. And not only that, guys, it's also going to have pretty impressive performance as well. So during my top speed run with this vehicle, I was managing to get it to around 270 miles per hour. Now, one thing I found pretty interesting with the VR4 is the fact that yes, it's going to do 270 miles per hour, which is obviously going to be pretty impressive for any street vehicle, but one thing, guys, I have to admit, it's really not going to be that impressive, at least compared to the BMW. Now the main reason why I say that is the fact that depending on the highway you might be on, this car is going to struggle to get above 260 miles per hour. I was finding myself using all of my nitrous to even get it to 270, and depending on the highway I was testing the top speed out on, it seemed to barely hit 260 anyway, so you could even go as far as saying is the Mitsubishi's top speed is probably not going to be all that impressive, especially with the way this thing is going to struggle when you start to try to get past that 250 mile per hour mark. Do keep in mind, by the way guys, this is going to be a 5-speed, and I noticed once you guys hit 4th gear the car can do around 220, which is actually going to be one of its biggest positives, is the fact that you don't have to shift it all that much. Around corners you can probably be in 3rd and 4th gear, and I noticed once you guys go into 5th gear the car is going to struggle to go past 235 miles per hour. You basically have to use the nitrous to actually get it past those speeds, which I really do think is going to hurt this car tremendously when it comes to racing. I was noticing the second I put this thing into 5th gear, I would go down a few miles per hour, basically being around 230. You would then have to use your Nitro Chemist set, which by the way on this car is going to be a need if you guys do want to get this thing above 265. Even then you're probably going to go through most of the nitrous anyway, but once I was doing around 230 miles per hour, you would have to use your nitrous to get above that anyway. So once again guys, I noticed depending on the road, for some odd reason the car is going to fight you the entire time. So in some ways, I would actually go as far as saying the BMW M8 is actually going to be a better option than the Mitsubishi. Now, I'm not saying the VR4 is going to be a bad car in any way. In fact, it's probably going to be one of the better street cars in the Crew 2. But I do feel like the way that 5th gear is going to be, I feel like the overall highest top speed is probably not going to be that great, especially compared to the BMW. At least when it comes to looks, guys, both cars are going to look awesome. But when it comes to the overall performance of both vehicles, I would say they're both going to be good in their own ways, and basically have their own flaws to go with them as well. So obviously the BMW might slide here and there because of the way it does handle. It's also going to be an 8-speed, so it might be some time to get used to it. And then on the other side of the spectrum with the VR4, it's going to be a 5-speed with a 5th gear that's supposed to be higher to bring the top speed up, even though to get that thing to a higher top speed, you're going to be finding yourself basically using all of your nitrous, which is kind of insane considering with a Nitro Chemist set, you're supposed to have double the nitrous, and the fact that it does take that to get it there is honestly a bit of a concern. So for me guys, I would probably have to pick the BMW over the VR4, especially when it comes to like racing in summits and or just racing in general. I actually really enjoy the way the BMW does handle. Plus I absolutely love the sound of the V8 this thing has as well. It sounds so raspy, and you really can tell it's actually a V8 compared to some of the other vehicles. Now even with this being like a shootout compared to both of these cars, I would definitely have to say the BMW is probably going to be my overall choice. Now don't get me wrong guys, I would not say the VR4 is going to be a bad vehicle like I did mention before. It does actually handle very nicely, and in some ways, the VR4 is definitely going to have better stability than the BMW, but even with that guys, I would still choose the BMW over that car. I really do think it's going to be a better option. Now I don't think the VR4 was nerfed a while back, but I do feel like in some ways it might have been, because I do remember that thing hitting 270 much easier, which is going to make it the second fastest street car in the entire game. If you guys were wondering, the fastest street car in the game at the moment is the BMW M8 Performance Edition. That thing does like 275 or so, and it can actually get there pretty easily. I do feel like that car would easily smoke the VR4 in a lot of ways as well, but even then guys, with the VR4 having a higher top speed, even with the top speed being a bit faster on the VR4, I still think the BMW is easily going to have the edge here, and I would say a lot of people are really going to like this car over the VR4, even though it's going to be slightly slower when it comes to top speed than that car. But I do want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys prefer the M8 and or the VR4, and why? I really do think you cannot go wrong with either vehicle, but for me personally, I would say one is going to be a better option than the other.